Muhammad Umar Farooq Biological Video. Please make sure to subscribe, like and share. Ask the question for answer and comment about the artwork. You can also answer question to each of us solving the problem in the comment below. So today we will discuss about the circulatory system, we will discuss about the overview of the circulatory system as well as ECG electrocardiogram and we will see about the heartbeat and the heartbeat cycle. So that is here is first of all we will discuss about the heart structure and their function basically. So here is the heart which that contain a right atrium and right ventricle and left atrium and left ventricle. So the right atrium is contain a tricuspid valve between the atrium and ventricle. On the other hand, the left ventricle and left atrium contain a bicuspid valve. So here I write a mistake. So here is the left side, which that was my mistake about these things, is the right atrium instead of left atrium. So the left atrium should be, but here is the mistake. So here is the aorta, which that is basically aorta contain a three arch which contain a red oxygenated blood which transport to the body through the aortic arch, and on the other hand descending aorta is also as well. So here is the pulmonary vein, which that is pulmonary vein receive the oxygenated blood, and pulmonary artery, which that is through the blood from the heart to the lungs for oxygenation, for oxygenated blood. So the oxygenated blood is come from the pulmonary vein, which that is the red color is here, and here is the aorta and here is the descending aorta, and on the other hand the pulmonary arteries are looking like this. So basically here is the right atrium and right ventricle is here, but here is the R instead of L. So on the other hand the right atrium and right ventricle, which that is means the left atrium and left ventricle. So that is my mistake about that. Next diagram I will cover it. So that is here is the papillary muscle, which that is the attached by the chordae tendineae, which that is used for the muscle contraction of the heart. So that is the pumping of blood, which that is move. The heart apex is the end of the heart, which that is shortened during the heart relaxation, but when heart will be contract, that will be go more farther way. So that's here is the right atrium, which that is the basically right atrium to right ventricle, which this right ventricle contain a atrioventricular valve. This valve is also known as tricuspid valve, and here is the bicuspid valve, which that is also atrioventricular valve or bicuspid valve. So that is basically is made up of our septation or septum like structure by valve, which that is receive the oxygenated deoxygenated blood from here, that is the right atrium to right ventricle, and go into the pulmonary valve, and this pulmonary valve will allow the blood to move by the pulmonary artery into the lungs, and these lungs will receive the blood, and that's after the receiving of this blood, deoxygenated blood convert into the oxygenated blood, and this oxygenated blood will backward into the pulmonary vein, and this pulmonary vein contain red blood is known as oxygenated blood, and this oxygenated blood is come from here. So here it will be go the blood into the pulmonary vein to here is the backward is here. So that will be pulmonary vein will receive the oxygenated blood from here, and that is going into the left atrium to left ventricle, and this left ventricle to go into the aortic valve, and this aorta is very thick and thick valve, which that is give the more power to pump the blood into the body. So that is why the artery is thick and vein is thin as compared to the artery. So that is why important things. So here I am drawing the another heart diagram, which that is the complete, not cross sectional. So that's here is the coronary artery present, and here is the left atrium and left ventricle, and right atrium and right ventricle. So that is here is the right atrium, and that's here is the basically blood vessels is known as right coronary artery. And this right coronary artery is come from the aortic region, aorta, from the aorta, and here is the right coronary descending artery and a right coronary descending anterior artery, and here is the right circumflex artery, and here is the left circumflex artery. So that means the left circumflex artery and right circumflex artery, which that go into the backward of the heart, is the posterior side of the heart to supply the blood, oxygenated blood. So here is the left circumflex coronary artery, and here is the middle descending anterior coronary artery is here. So the here is the apex of the heart, which that is present, and that here is the vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava, which that receive the blood throughout the body, which that was are deoxygenated and go into the pulmonary artery, and that's after the pulmonary vein will receive the blood oxygenated, that's pump into the left atrium to left ventricle and go into the aortic valve throughout the body to supply the aorta. So here is the heart, which does contain a pulmonary artery, aorta, superior vena cava, and that is the coronary artery. So this diagram we will discuss about the upper part of the cross sectional area. So here is the cross section of the upper part to show the valve by the posterior and anterior view of the basically anterior and posterior is the front upside of the heart, which that contain a tricuspid valve and bicuspid valve. So the tricuspid valve is the right side, which that means the deoxygenated blood is received by the tricuspid valve. On the other hand, the bicuspid valve is contained here, is which receive the oxygenated blood, and that will be here is a. So this is the red color shows that the aortic valve, which contain also three leaflets, and on the other hand the pulmonary valve is also contain three leaflets, just like a tricuspid valve. But here is the right side, and on the other hand is the left side, which that show the right atrium and right ventricle, and that's show the also. And here is the adipose tissue is yellowish color, show that the protection as well as provide the fatty acid for the energy to the heart during the fasting time. So here is the blood valve is present, and here is the aortic valve is contain three leaflets, and here is the pulmonary valve, which that also contain three leaflets. So that is the cross section area is important to know that it should look like this. Just I want to share this diagram. So here is the outer covering is known as the epicardium and myocardium as well as endocardium. So basically the epicardium, pericardium and myocardium. Inside the myocardium, between the epicardium and myocardium is known as the pericardium. So this layer is protective layer, as well as feel the inside is between the myocardium and pericardium contain a fluid filled cavity. It's why it's because it's sportive, so that's why. So here is important thing we will discuss about the circulation, systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation. So what will be happen and what is the pulmonary and systemic circulation? So here I am drawing the inferior and superior vena cava, which that is provide the blood into the right atrium, and right atrium to tricuspid valve, which that open and go into the right ventricle, and that's received by the after the contraction of the heart, ventricular contraction to receive the by a pulmonary valve to go into the pulmonary artery, and thus deoxygenated blood go into the basically into the lungs, and these lungs will be give the oxygenation. So that means the oxygen, hemoglobin will receive the oxygen and release the carbon dioxide from the hemoglobin, and this release of the to convert a reddish color due to the iron containing oxygenation. So this oxygenation is contain a red color, that is why it is oxygenated blood is convert from the deoxygenated blood into the oxygenated. So important to know about that these things is pulmonary vein will be receive the blood to oxygenated blood, which that's go back into the heart from the left atrium. So the left atria will be receive the blood from the pulmonary vein. So single pulmonary vein which contain a deoxygenated blood, but rest of the body contain deoxygenated blood in the form of vein. So the vein contain a deoxygenated blood, but here is just opposite. So that is here is the left atrium will receive the blood, and that's go into the left ventricle. After the left ventricle receiving the blood by the atrial contraction, and atrial contraction will receive the give the blood into the atrium ventricle, and that ventricle will contract to move the blood into the aorta, as well as descending aorta and aortic arch, and these descending aorta and ascending aortic arch, which that is basically important to know that will go into the here is the systemic circulation. So this systemic circulation we will discuss about here, that is the systemic circulation mean the body will receive the oxygen and carbon dioxide will release into the blood, and that cycle is continuous. So here is the aorta which that's the give the blood into the assist into the body. So the aortic arch which that's convert into the clavicle artery and clavicle vein. In the form of vein we will talk about the inferior vena cava. On the other hand is the here is the part of the head which that is the middle branch of the aorta is supply in the form of carotid artery as well as cranial artery. So the cranial vein is also converted into the superior vena cava. So that's all to know about that. Here is the human which that is head containing region, but here is the important to know that is the descending aorta is descending aorta is go into the trunk. For example, digestive mesenteric artery and hepatic artery, splenic artery, pancreatic artery. On the other hand, one more and more, that is the basically adrenal artery, gastric artery. That is all artery is and that's converted into the gastric vein and adrenal vein, etc., etc. So why? Because it is the give the provide the oxygen and receive the carbon dioxide toward the inferior and superior vena cava. That's back to the oxygenation. So this cycle it is known as systemic circulation. But on the other hand, there's lungs will receive and release the blood in the form of oxygen, providing it is known as the pulmonary circulation. So the human contain a two type of circulation is pulmonary and systemic circulation. So the systemic circulation means the whole body will be recover receive the blood. On the other hand, the lungs will be receive, that is pulmonary circulation. So that is important to know that. So is the systemic circulation, and that is the pulmonary circulation is circulation of blood for oxygen for oxygen carrying into the hemoglobin of the red blood cell is the circulation. So that is why heart is important for oxygen receiving and oxygen carbon dioxide releasing property. So why important oxygen? Oxygen, without oxygen we are nothing, because our Krebs cycle is use oxygen to produce energy. So that is why glycolysis is not used basically, but we are preferred animal for the Krebs cycle. So that's Krebs cycle use the oxygen, and that is why important things. So that is why every cell want the oxygen and releasing the carbon dioxide. So that is why carbon Krebs cycle release the carbon dioxide for the consumption of energy, for produce the energy. So energy producing mechanism use carbon dioxide, use oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So their circulation is done through the heart. So here is the vein which that contain valves. So this valve is not allowed to backward movement of the of the blood for mixing into the artery. So that's why important things to note, that here is the valves of the vein contain a valve which that is because low pressure of the vein and thin. So that is why the backflow is prevented by the valves. So here is the important, here is the cross section of the lower area contain epicardium, pericardium and myocardium, and between the uh, pericardium and epicardium, that is the blood vessels are present, and these blood vessels is, here is the cross section. Its blood vessel provide the provide the oxygen to the heart. So that's important things which that is important, and just only here we had covered the just single topic. Next video we will discuss about the whole detail of the whole detail of the part of the epicardium, myocardium and endocardium, but here just we will discuss about the blood vessels. So eight are artery and vein. So here is the artery. First of all we will discuss about. So the artery is the thick and elastic uh, pipe-like structure which that contain a lumen, and lumen filled with the oxygenated blood, and upper part is known as the tunica externa, and here is the inside of the tunica externa is known as the tunica media. But the tunica media is a thick, muscular and thick wall, and that is that here is the elastic tissue is showing in the red line, and here the pink color shows that the elastic tissue, and here the pink line is known as the tunica interna. So it is also known as a tunica externa in the vein. So here the valve is present, but here the elastic tissue is the less thick as compared to other. So the elastic basically tunica media is thin as compared to the vein, as compared to the artery, sorry. So here is the vein converted into the capillary, and this capillary contain one single cell thickness. So this single cell thickness is due to the provide every cell requirement. On the basis of requirement, every cell will receive the blood oxygen for the consumption of the energy, for the using or producing the energy. So that's important things. Here is the basically one cell thickness is due to the one cell. So that is why important to know that that is the blood transfuse the oxygen and receive the carbon dioxide from the cell which that may be somatic cell or reproductive cell can be happen. So here is we will discuss about the electrocardiogram or ECG. So here is the human which that is using the check to show this wave, and this electrode will be applied 10 electrode on the different region to apply to produce a wave, which that is the electrical wave produced P, Q, R, T, and further is the U also. So this wave will be received and produced by the sinoatrial node, which that is here, and that is the sinoatrial node send the signal toward the atrioventricular node, and this signal will be contract when sinoatrial node will be activate by generate impulse to contract atria. On the other hand, atrioventricular node, which that is give the impulse to the Purkinje fiber to contract the ventricle. So that's why the ventricle will be contract. So here we will discuss about the detail of the wave. So here is a P wave, which that is the atrial depolarization. So the atrial depolarization mean we will discuss, and here is the QRS wave, which that is the ventricular depolarization. So it means the ventricular depolarize, it means contract, and atrial depolarization mean atria contract in the P wave. So here is the T wave is the ventricular repolarization, and U wave is sometimes known as a Purkinje repolarization. So the ventricular repolarization means the relaxation again, and ventricular depolarization means the contraction of the ventricle. So that's important to know that. Here is the important thing is that we will discuss here, that is the action potential will generate the into the heart muscle, that is the basically nerve impulse which that generate the action potential. So here is the millivolt, which that show is a positive 40, so the heart will generate the impulse. So that is the here is the stimulus, and that is why here is that depolarization and repolarization, and action potential on the positive 40 millivolt, and here is the basically here is the failed initiation. So if stimulus if not required more than threshold is minus 55, that will be not progress. So here the action potential will be occur, and there's repolarization to refractory period, which that is the more negative than 70, and again will be resting state. So here we will discuss about the four phases of this phases of this site, this electrocardiogram to show there's waves. So here is the first wave is known as a P waves, which that's produced when contracts atrium contracts, and an electrical impulse travel from the sinoatrial node to the wall of atrium. So that wall of atrium will be allowed to move, that is the atrium will be contract, and P wave will be produced. But on the other hand is the next is that the impulse reach the atria and ventricular node, atrioventricular node, or AV node, and this atrioventricular node which are ready by about 0.1 second. So the it is basically produce a electrical waves from here, which that is the electrocardiogram shows that is the PQ wave. And after this is the bundle branches carry signal from the atrioventricular node to the heart apex, begin ventricle contracts. So that means the ventricle will be contract into the Q to S impulse. So this is the Q to S impulse will be generated, and this impulse generate to when contract the ventricle. So the ventricle is the more tightly contract because it provide the more blood into the body as well as the lungs receive from it. So the single next is the single speed through the ventricle will causing them to contract. So the basically is the last time is the again will be hard. After the recovery is the T waves which recover the basically and Purkinje repolarization, and this repolarization is the recovery time, and this that is known as a T. So that's important thing is that the T to U is Purkinje repolarization is also, and this cycle will begin again. So we had study about the circulatory system and ECG. So thanks for watching.